Salam, salam. My name is Daniel Samir Siran, and today's topic for today's video is the Tibetan Buddhist practice of Tonglen. And Tonglen is a type of prayer and a type of meditation. It focuses on breath work, and it also focuses on imagining certain attributes, certain mental states, and certain emotions that you wish to give to others and that you wish to receive for yourself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have some notes here that I'll be touching base with my notes, that I'll be giving my own explanation of what Tonglen is to me and my own practice. And then I'm going to read some words from the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. And this is a book by the author is a Tibetan Buddhist monk. So I'm giving you my perspective, which is one of a student of Buddhism. I'm just a simple student. I'm just a dude. Okay, I'm not a monk. I'm not a venerated anything. I'm just a dude who practices Buddhism and who has studied Buddhism for a while. And I find this practice of Tonglen to be useful in my own life. And then I'm going to give you a perspective again of Sogyal Rinpoche, who is a Tibetan Buddhist monk. And that's a more of an authoritative perspective because, of course, this is a Tibetan Buddhist practice, and I'm going to give you a perspective of somebody who is Tibetan Buddhist. But for now, my take and my perspective on Tonglen is I use this and I practice this Tonglen as a supplement to my regular set of prayers, okay? So I have a regular set of prayers that I practice on a zafu, okay? And I face east when I practice my prayers, when I say my prayers and perform my prayers. But for Tonglen, it's a little bit less formal, okay? I don't need to sit on the zafu. I don't need to face east. I can be anywhere. I can be in a car, in a plane. I can be in a bus. I can be on the go, and I can remember my Tonglen practice. And actually, Tonglen practice is good for situations where I might be feeling stressed, or I might be feeling like, I'm being pushed to my limits, or I'm at work or something, and I might be feeling like I'm going through it. So Tonglen is a good practice to center yourself in the breath, center yourself on the ground, and center yourself with the earth, and center yourself with this present moment. So Tonglen is a really good practice to bring yourself back to the moment, back to the here and now, if ever you get flustered and carried away for whatever reason, because that does happen. Okay, so as a form of prayer, it's good because we can think of other people. We can think of our connection to other human beings. And like I said, I like to do Tonglen. I like to practice Tonglen for others. And that means for others means for people who are close to me, people who I have a personal connection to, people in my family, people in my chosen family, people in my Sangha. Okay, and then I can also practice Tonglen with strangers, with people I don't necessarily know, with people I see on the bus, or people I see walking the streets, or people who I'm sharing the line at the grocery store with. Okay, so that's a form of prayer that I can wish and I can will, I can imagine giving goodness to other people. And those other people include friends, family, my Sangha, and then also strangers and people who I don't necessarily have a personal connection with. What does this say? Oh yeah, this is imagining. When you're imagining to give, that you give a goodness, a good feeling, a good emotion, or a good state of mind, or something good to somebody else, you're imagining that you're giving it to them. But what's happening is, as you practice this more, is you're also receiving that good thing. You're receiving that good thing for yourself. You're giving it back to yourself in the long run. So that's really important to remember, is that, and then once you practice this for a long time, like for a while, you begin to develop a habit of this. It becomes habitual. It becomes like a second nature to you. Is that what you're doing is you're imagining that you're giving something of goodness that you have to somebody else, but then you're also beginning to blur the line. You're blurring the line of self and other, okay, which is really important. Because for me, from my perspective, for my Buddhist practice, part of my Buddhist practice is to see myself as an integral part of the human experience, and to see myself as an important piece of this life. and to see that I have a connection to all of life around me, and that all of life around me has a connection to myself, and to see where I fit into all of life around me, that I am a part of life just as much as a tree, and to see that we're on equal footing. So part of my Tonglen practice is imagining how I can give goodness to others, how I can give a good emotion or a good feeling or just something of goodness to others, so that in the long run, I'm doing two things. I'm reminding myself that I have goodness within myself to give, number one. And number two is that I'm realizing that what I want for others, those close to me, in my Sangha, for example, or for people who I don't necessarily even know, who I'm just sharing an experience of standing in a grocery line with, that I want for them what I want for myself as well. Okay, so that I'm sharing what I want for myself with what I want for other beings who we are sharing this human experience with. Okay, and in this care for others, we're creating care for ourselves, because that's really what it's about. It's care for self and care for other, and to see how other and self, how we're really intrinsically connected. Okay, and one thing I like to think about this, I liken this Tonglen practice to myself as a tree. When I'm practicing Tonglen, I like to remember myself as if I was a tree in the spiritual realm, whereas I can imagine myself taking in something negative from, I can imagine myself removing something negative from somebody else, and I can imagine myself giving them something positive that I have, or replacing their negative that I have removed from them and replacing it with something positive that I have. Much like a tree breathes in air quotes, or absorbs carbon dioxide and breathes out or exudes clean oxygen for us to breathe in, and for other animals and creatures to breathe in the clean air. So much like a tree cleans our air and takes the carbon dioxide from the air and then gives us clean oxygen, that's how I liken my Tonglen practice, is that when I breathe in and I imagine that I can remove something negative from somebody who I care about, or somebody, whoever is the object of my Tonglen practice at the time, I breathe in and I remove something negative from them, and I breathe out and I give them something positive. So how my thinking typically works in my mind, what I'm saying to myself while I'm doing this, just for a kind of rudimentary understanding. And just another thing I'd like to say is this video isn't meant to be comprehensive. So I'm hoping that if you've never heard of Tonglen, the Tibetan Buddhist practice of Tonglen, I'm hoping that this will be a jump off point for you, that this will be a good video for you to spark interest, and that you can take this and run with it. You can put in the Googles Tonglen and Tibetan Buddhist Tonglen, and you'll have some keywords for yourself to start your own research and really start and continue your own practice and develop your own understanding of Tonglen. So I'm hoping this is just a precursor, like a mixer to get you started on the path of understanding and practicing your own Tonglen. So again, this is not meant to be comprehensive, okay? But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so how I think in my mind is, when I breathe in, I have somebody in mind, like one of my brothers, or a sister, or somebody, let's just say somebody in the grocery store line. I breathe in and I think to myself, I take in any stress that this person hold on, I'll start over. I breathe in, I'm taking in any stress that they may be potentially or presently feeling, and I'm still holding the breath, okay? And then when I let go, I breathe out. I breathe out and I give them a sense of calm. I give them peace and stillness. And it's just that simple. It's just with every breath, I'm breathing in and I'm saying to myself and imagining that I can remove something negative from whoever I'm thinking about, whoever I want to practice this with and for. I breathe in and I remove something negative from them, and I breathe out and I give them something positive. And I found it important to name on both sides. So name the negative thing, and even if I don't know if they're feeling it, I know that they'll feel it at some point, and I know that they felt it at some point, because that's just a human emotion. It's a human thing. And that's why it's important that I say to myself that it's potentially feeling or presently feeling. Okay, so that's important. So I say, I breathe in, I remove any anger that so-and-so is potentially or presently feeling. And I'm still holding my breath. And then I breathe out. I give so-and-so calm and stillness. Okay, and then it's that simple. With every breath, I'm just imagining, with every breath, whoever I have in my mind and in my heart at the time of practicing Tonglen, with every breath, I imagine that I'm removing something negative from them, and that when I breathe out, I'm giving something positive to them. Okay, and that's really how simple it is. And there's also multiple types of Tonglen. So what I'm talking about right now is Tonglen for others. But what I'm going to transition to now is in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. Is he writes about 4 different types of Tonglen. And I'm going to read what he has to say about Tonglen, Environmental Tonglen, and Self Tonglen. Okay, so this, what I was just talking about, is Tonglen for others. Okay. And now I'm going to read what Sogyal Rinpoche has to say about Environmental Tonglen and then Self Tonglen, okay? So number 1 is Environmental Tonglen. We all know how the moods and atmosphere of our mind have a great hold on us. Sit with your mind and feel its mood and atmosphere. If you feel your mood is uneasy or the atmosphere is dark, then as you breathe in, mentally absorb whatever is unwholesome. And as you breathe out, mentally give out calm, clarity, and joy. So purifying and healing the atmosphere and environment of your mind. This is why I call this first stage the practice of Environmental Tonglen. 2. Self Tonglen. For the purpose of this exercise, divide yourself into 2 aspects, A and B. A is the aspect of you that is whole, compassionate, warm, and loving, like a true friend, really willing to be there for you, responsive and open to you, without ever judging you, whatever your faults or shortcomings. B is the aspect of you that has been hurt, that feels misunderstood and frustrated, bitter, or angry, who might have been, for example, unjustly treated or abused as a child, or has suffered in relationships, or has been wronged by society. Now, as you breathe in, imagine that A opens his or her heart completely and warmly and compassionately accepts and embraces all of B's suffering and negativity and pain and hurt. Moved by this, B opens his or her heart and all pain and suffering melt away in this compassionate embrace. As you breathe out, imagine A sending out to B all his or her healing love, warmth, trust, comfort, confidence, happiness, and joy. So that's the 2 kind of other modes of Tonglen. So I've touched on Tonglen for others, and then Sogyal Rinpoche, via his book, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, I've touched on Environmental Tonglen and Self Tonglen. Okay, so the main thing here is to really imagine. It's really this practice of Tonglen is really hinging and is really founded upon the foundation of this is your imagination. And that's why part of why I love it is that it relies on my imagination to really feel what it's like, or what it would be like, that if you could remove something negative from somebody else or from yourself and replace it with something positive, to really feel what that would really be like, how the trueness of that would feel. And this really drives home the idea that you have the power, we have the power to create in our human capacity, in our human minds, that we have the power to create goodness for ourselves and for others. All right, that's all I have. Salam, salam.